Well, hello and welcome to this episode of the Terri Cole Show that I want to start with a question. Do you feel like you are out of gas? Right? Are you just running on empty? Do you feel like you need to replenish something? Are you burnt out? That is my question for you. And if you're nodding your head yes, I want to say hello, welcome to the club, because so many people have been writing in and asking me, is it normal how they're feeling? So let's talk about how you can bounce back from burnout. In today's video, I'm going to be breaking down the difference between being stressed out and being burnt out, because they are actually different things. I'm going to give you some inventory questions that you can ask to try to pinpoint the things that are draining you the most. And I'm going to, for those who want a deeper dive, I'm going to give you 3 strategies to bounce back from burnout. So let's do it. Before we get into it, if you're new to my channel, please introduce yourself in the comments below, because we are a friendly group. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so that you get a notification every time something new comes out, because we roll out new videos to help you live your best life every single Tuesday. So I wouldn't want you to miss a thing. And if you don't know me, my name is Terri Cole. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, and I'm the author of Boundary Boss. And you can get that book right there at boundarybossbook.com. I also want to say thank you so much for all of your questions and your comments. You know that I read every single one, and I love to highlight them in each episode. So in this episode, I'm highlighting Trakori J's comment under Discover Your Attraction Type. And they say, my girlfriend introduced me to you before the end of 2021. I admit I have viewed your videos like a daily learning tool. I thank her very much and appreciate your insight. We are going to put in the work this year, and you have really helped us. Well, thank you for admitting that. I appreciate that you are using this channel as a daily tool to evolve, because that is exactly what I designed this channel to be. Is a tool that no matter where you are in the world, no matter what your socioeconomic status, no matter what you're doing, you can always go to YouTube. I have 370 videos on YouTube right here that you can go to and find something to learn about, find something to uplift your spirit, find something to give you hope, because you guys are it. So let's move into today's content. What is burnout? So burnout is basically what happens to you emotionally and physically when you're just completely exhausted. So excessive and prolonged stress is one of the main things that causes actual burnout, right? You feel overwhelmed, you feel emotionally drained, unable to meet the constant demands of your environment. So let's think about what we've all experienced for the past 2 years. There has been an unending demand on many of us, especially if you're the primary caregiver for kids, for aging parents, if you also have a job or a career. There's so many things, because we all had to pivot so much during the lockdown and during the pandemic, and we're still pivoting. But there's something about changing the amount of bandwidth that we have to expend to change, right? When we get into routines, this doesn't take as much bandwidth, right? Because it's what we do every day. The neural pathways for our regular way of being are very well ingrained in our brains. So there's all these things that normally you wouldn't have to think about. And so many of my friends who were homeschooling their kids while working, while dealing with being in a small space with so many people, had the feeling that they were failing, that it didn't matter how much work they did. There was no way to succeed in the situation they were in. So many friends saying, I can't help my 5th grader with math because I literally don't know it. I didn't learn it. I feel like a failure. I feel like I can't do it. This can be incredibly depressing, depleting, and lead to burnout. Because think about what burnout does is it really lessens your productivity, your ability to be productive. It sucks your energy. Like burnout makes you so exhausted. It's like you ran a marathon, even though you didn't. when you think about the emotions that go along with feeling burnout, which is different than being stressed out, and I'm actually gonna compare and contrast in this episode because I think it will be helpful for you to see the differences, because they're easily mistaken for each other, but they're definitely not the same thing. The main feelings are hopelessness, helplessness, starting to feel cynical, and feeling resentful. This is what burnout does, the same way with depression, where you stop feeling like there's value in what you're doing, or with depression, things that used to bring you joy no longer do. This is similar with burnout, where you're sort of like, what's the point? Because it really does feel like you don't have any more that you can give to anyone. It's like you're at the real end of the tank. So obviously, feeling this way impacts all the places in the life, all the relationships, all the everything, because you are who's the common denominator in your life experience is you. So it's important to understand the difference between burnout and being stressed out. And then I'm going to give you a couple of tools that you can use, some strategies to really fill up your own tank and not find yourself in this position again, regardless of what goes on, right? We need to be able to take care of ourselves no matter what. So when you're stressed out, you're doing too much, right? There's too many things to do and you don't feel like you're going to get them done, or you're not going to do them right. When you feel burnt out, you want to disengage from those things. Rather than speeding up to try to get them done, you're just like, wow, almost like giving up on doing them. Being stressed out, your emotions are highly activated, right? When you're burnt out, your emotions are more muffled, right? We call it blunted in therapy language, where you don't really feel them. It's like things that used to be sharp are kind of rounded because everything is sort of moving into the same feeling, this malaise of just exhaustion and low-grade negativity and just feeling hopeless. When you're stressed out, there's an urgency, right? You are kind of dancing as fast as you can. There's a hyperactivity. When you're burnt out, you're really, instead of that feeling of urgency that can propel us forward, you're feeling the helplessness and hopelessness that I was talking about before. You also have with loss of energy when it comes to being stressed out because you're burning so much energy. Being burnt out is more loss of motivation, loss of hope, right? It's like you don't see the point, which is actually different. Those two things are very different. Too much stress can lead to anxiety disorders, where everything can trigger this stressful experience. And too much being burnt out in this way leads to depression. It actually just leads to depression and detachment. So think about, when we're talking about being burnt out, it's this desire to put distance between you and other people and you and projects. And I definitely felt this way at different points during the pandemic, where I wasn't sure. I was like, am I hibernating? And I think I was exhausted from writing the book and then literally promoting a book in the middle of a pandemic, doing everything from this friggin' yellow chair right here that I'm sitting in, while my mother was going through cancer. So there was a lot of things I couldn't control. So when I was doing research to do this episode, I was like, wow, I was naming what I was feeling 8 months ago, 10 months ago. I was naming that being stressed out. And yet the symptoms I was experiencing was really actually being burnt out, because I did pull back. And I had a perfect excuse because I was writing a book. So I barely interacted with anyone except my family. But there was this point where I remember saying to my sister, I don't see the point in all of this. And I don't know if I've ever said that in my life, but I really felt that way. Like I was doing all of this work. I was so exhausted, all the hypervigilance that we were all expending and continued to expend because of the pandemic, of like washing hands and wearing masks and not going to this place and not being 6 feet, all of that took its toll as well. I don't regret doing it, but it's exhausting to do so. And when I said to my sister, I kind of don't see the point in all of this and what I'm doing and all the energy. And she was like, are you okay? I think you should call your therapist and set up an appointment. And I actually did and started working out what was really going on. So let's talk about the physical aspects of what is happening. When you're stressed out physically, you're like burning out your adrenals, right? This is a physical, you are expending all of this physical and emotional energy. And with being burnt out, it's really more emotional where you feel it rather than in such a physical way. And what are really the terrible downsides of this is, then we know this, and this is incredibly well documented, that being perennially or perpetually stressed out can lessen your lifespan, is like incredibly bad for your health. But continuing to feel burnt out is really bad for your quality of life. So we want to up your quality of life and figure out what you can do to not be burnt out if you're identifying with this. And these are actually good ideas to do whether you're stressed out or whether you're burnt out. It's all about self-care. So my first idea is you've got to become a boundary boss. Correct. You cannot overextend yourself. Learn how to say no, not because you're isolating and hibernating and getting away from people. Learn how to say no to things that you really don't want to do, because that burns you out doing too many things, And there's a way that you can change your mind about saying no, that I love to look at it like when I say no to things I don't want to do or I don't have the capacity to do, even though it might disappoint someone else, I'm leaving room to be able to say yes to something else that I really want to do. And I'm not doing things in a begrudging or resentful way, because that's so easy to do as well, right? When we say yes, when we want to say no, so much of the time you just end up pissed off and exhausted, right? Yes. All right, my second idea. I want you to set up a Zenden, right? So this is just a talk about it. If you know my work, you're probably familiar. If you're not, I'll quickly tell you. This is setting up an external sacred space. It could be right now, it could be this candle. That could be my Zenden, right? Anything. I do it I have one in one room, and then I have one next to my bed because that's where I usually meditate. But it's a sacred space that will remind you to tend to your internal sacred space. And that is the most important part of this process, is doing some relaxation techniques, meditation, self-reflection, mindful breathing, yoga stretching, really taking care of yourself. And so putting time in your calendar to spend time in your Zenden, all of these things I want you to look at it like it's filling up your gas tank, right? You're telling me my gas tank is empty. Help, I don't know what to do. This is what you do. Every time you take 5 minutes to breathe mindfully in your Zenden, you light a candle, you get out some delicious smelling essential oil, right? You put it on your hand, take a deep breath. It's so easy. There are so many apps that you can use as well. It's not hard. It's just a matter of putting it in your calendar so you actually do it. So that is my second idea, is we're not just making sacred space in our home or in our apartment or wherever you are. You're making sacred space in your calendar to tend to the sacred space inside of you, because this is where burnout really, really negatively impacts us, is our internal experience becomes really negative and really pointless. Like I was saying, well, what is the actual point? Which is a really terrible way to feel. And the last thought I have for you on this is, and you may not feel, if you really are feeling burnt out and don't have the space, but in any way, big or small, do something kind for someone else. Because nothing will get you out of your head fast enough than paying it forward, helping someone else who may also be in need, who's in pain. And I don't mean at the expense of yourself. Listen, don't do that until you've put enough gas in your tank that you can do that without having it be damaging to you. But I can tell you that getting out of my own head, helping someone else, volunteering, making phone calls, whatever those things are, knowing that even though I don't know what else I can possibly do, in this moment, I am contributing to the well-being of someone else in our human family. Like, this is actually a valuable exercise. So, and even if it's just something where you write a snail mail note to someone who you've been thinking about, someone that you care about, someone who you really owe a gratitude to and you haven't said it, just get little cards that are blank. And even if it's once a week, write a card to someone. Dial into your gratitude. What are you grateful for? Who are the people who have been there for you? Who are the people in your front row? I can think about people as far back as like middle school teachers who really helped shape the course of my life. And it's so interesting. And I know this from being a therapist, that people who reach back to me years later and say, that what we talked about or what we healed together or all that changed my life. That I talk about you with my friends all the time. That those things mean so much, especially as a therapist, because you help people, they go on with their lives, no problem. But you're like, wow, I hope everything is great with that person, but you really don't know. So I always feel so grateful when someone drops me a note and says, I'm doing great, or this is what's happening, or I got married. It just makes me feel great to know or to feel like I helped them in some way. So that really is paying it forward and doing a kindness to someone else. And that will, I promise you, that also fills your tank and will lift your spirit for sure. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I put everything that you need in the guide. Just go to terricole.com/guide so you can walk through these steps to actually have a deeper understanding of the difference between being stressed out and being burnt out, but more importantly, understanding, personalizing what is happening for you, because we are all so incredibly unique and so different. So what's happening for me, or the story that I shared, that isn't happening for you. But I have some really good questions to ask you so that you can find what is draining the crap out of you so you can make different choices in your life. So if you like this episode, please share it with the people in your life. Take a picture of you watching it and share it with me on Instagram. Put it in your Instagram story and I will repost it. Thank you for spending time with me. I super duper appreciate you. And as always, take care of you.